hello everyone, and welcome to Proline. I'm John Cranton in Las Vegas, joined by Jeff Saad, who runs Las Vegas Sports Services. Today we're going to take a look at the Pac-12 college football season preview. We got returning starters, some betting trends to keep in mind, as well as some marquee games with some of the early lines on them. The Pac-12 last year, really the North dominated. You had powerhouses Stanford and Oregon all season long. Stanford pulled the upset as an 18-point underdog in beating them during the regular season, got to the Pac-12 title game where they were a big favorite and squeaked by UCLA 27-24. And Jeff, really, it looks like we have Oregon and Stanford as the two dominant teams again in the Pac-12 North. Though, which one do you see as the powerhouse?
Well, I'd go with Oregon right now. You know, they had a coaching change, of course, Mark Helfrich, but you couldn't ask for a better situation for a coaching change. And you have here, he was the offensive coordinator, and it's an offensive juggernaut there at Oregon. Nothing much of a change. They have 9 returning offensive starters. Defense, they returned 7. They were 12-1 last year, straight up, 8-4 against the spread. They did lose to Stanford at home, 17-14 as 18-point favorites. Other than that, though, they're going to have the no-hitter option attack again. Last year they rushed for 323 yards, third in the nation. They passed for 222 yards, 49.6 points per game. And don't look for much difference this year. The sophomore quarterback Marcus Mariota had broke the record for most touchdowns, both the conference records for most touchdowns in a season, 32, only 6 picks. They have returning backs, junior D'Anthony Thomas, 701 yards, sophomore Byron Marshall, and they're just loaded in the backfield. So on offense, everything's good for Oregon. The defense allowed just 21.6 points per game last year, which is pretty good as much as they're on the field. They do lose some starters this year, but because of their offense not being on the field much, the defensive players get a lot of experience. So this year, there won't be much of a problem. Secondary looks really good. Let's see here. We have they had John Boyette and his backup Avery Patterson lost for the year with knee injuries, every back. And they led the nation last year in interceptions at 26. They're 30-14 over the total, 7-5 over the total in 2012. I think they won the North with 11-1 record overall. Thursday, November 7th, it's Oregon at Stanford. Oregon -4. It's hard to pick against Oregon, but this is a revenge game. Stanford getting 4 points at home. You might want to take a look at that, although it's very early. But right now, it's Oregon -4 over Stanford on November 7th, John.
Yeah, Chip Kelly certainly didn't leave the cupboard bare for the Ducks. They're certainly a loaded program. In that game you mentioned, last year's game, it was the Stanford defense that really rose up. Oregon was just 4 of 17 on third down. Both teams had just over 400 yards, but Stanford had a slight edge in yards rushing and passing, and they had a whopping edge in time of possession, 37-23. Stanford won that game despite 3 turnovers, so everybody's going to be watching that Thursday night marquee game. While Oregon is sort of flash, finesse, and speed, Stanford couldn't be more different as far as how they built their teams. They are power up front on the offensive line and the defensive line, and I'm going to look at them as perhaps the best team in the Pac-12. They're off a 12-2 rebuilding season, so it's remarkable how good they were under David Shaw. You got 8 starters back on defense, 6 on offense. On offense, it's more of a run-oriented team behind sophomore quarterback/running back Kevin Horgan. He had 9 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, however, over 71% completions, and he's a very good runner for quarterback, 263 yards rushing. It's a balanced offensive attack, and there's plenty of running back depth with him. Senior Anthony Wilkerson plus Ricky Seal and junior running back Remon Rice. So this is going to be one of the best running games in the nation with a terrific offensive line. They averaged 28 points, 174.3 yards rushing. That was 49th in the nation. Outstanding offensive line. Got to be a top 5. They do have a couple of their receiving threats to watch. They left early for the NFL, so you have to wonder if this passing attack it's going to be in transition for the Cardinal. They're going to be a run-first attack. But, boy, when you want to talk about defense, boy, Stanford is really something, one of the best front sevens in the nation. The linebacking core for the Cardinals is absolutely stocked. They got senior Shane Scove, a first-team All-Pac-12 selection in Trent Murphy. Stanford led the nation last year in sacks with 57. They also led in tackles for a loss. So that's how they beat that Oregon team. Secondary has another star in Pac-12, all Pac-12 safety Ed Reynolds, and they have a rising star at cornerback in Alex Carter. So they're going to lean on the ground game and this phenomenal defense. When you look at the marquee games that are already up as far as betting numbers, first one is October 19th. UCLA is playing at Stanford. Cardinal a 10-point favorite right now. And then November 16th, they are at USC. USC is a 1-point favorite. I don't quite agree with that. I think USC is very much overrated, and Stanford will get the win in that despite being an early dog. And with that rushing game and great defense, it's not surprising to see Stanford on a 9-5 run under the total. Wouldn't be surprised to see that continue as well. Any other teams, Jeff, in the Pac-12 South that may step up and surprise?
Well, UCLA, of course, they're more optimistic there than they have been since the 90s, probably mostly due to Jim Mora. They tried the alumni thing with Carl Durrell and Rick Neuhauer, so that didn't work too well. So they figured that in order to get some good recruits in there, they might as well do what SC did with Pete Carroll, hire a former NFL coach, and it's worked out great so far. I think some publications have UCLA rated as the best recruiting year in the Pac-12 this season. Last year, they were 9-5, 8-6 against the spread. They did lose to Baylor 49-26 in the bowl game, so Jim Moore is going to concentrate on depth and more physicality this year. The offense, they finally have a decent quarterback after years of mediocrity. Brett Hundley, 29 TDs, 11 interceptions. They averaged 34 points last year, 274 yards passing for Hundley, the team averaged 190 yards rushing. 4 starters returned to the offensive line. Damian Thigpen, the running back, is coming back from knee injury. They have to replace Jonathan Franklin, but with the spread offense, they have multiple candidates who can fit in there. The defensive line is good, led by All-American linebacker Anthony Barr, who's some consider the best linebacker in the Pac-12. They lost both their starting quarterbacks, and last year they were 91st in pass defense. But this year they get back Fabian Monroe, Randall Goforth, Fabian Moreau, Ishmael Adams, so they should be good there in the secondary. Last year they allowed 27.6 points a game. They have to improve on that. They're on a 9-5 run over the total. They have road games at Nebraska, Stanford, and Oregon, plus they have SC. Those road games are going to be tough. They ended last season 0-3, 1-2 against the spread, losing twice to Stanford, and then to Baylor. November 30th in the big intercity rivalry game, UCLA SC's -7. They're still making these lines based on reputation. I think 7 points is a lot for UCLA in that game, even though it is a revenge game for SC. But I think UCLA wins the South there, and because of those road games, it could be tough to do better than an 8-4 season, though, John.
I would agree with you. I'd take the +7 with UCLA against an overrated USC team. I'm going to take a look at another Pac-12 South team, and that's Arizona State. This is a sleeper team, the Sun Devils, in this conference. I mean, they're off a terrific year under Coach Todd Graham. He accomplished everything on offense that he couldn't get done at Pitt, and he's got 6 starters back on offense, 8 on defense. This team went 8-5 straight up, 8-4-1 against the spread last year. Look at the offense, 38.4 points per game. He's got 3 starters back on the offensive line. He's got a terrific junior quarterback in Taylor Kelley, 29 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, all that as a sophomore. He's got senior running back Marion Grice in the backfield with 679 yards. He's got a terrific tight end in Chris Coyle who had 696 yards. And they also have a sophomore running back in G.J. Foster, who is clearly a keeper. Do have a lot of thin experience at wide receiver. That's going to be the key, but they picked up a junior college transfer in Jalen Strong. He's a pretty good talent who could step in right away. Defense is kind of a mixed bag. I mean, the numbers weren't bad, 24.3 points per game allowed, and they led the nation in tackles for loss and were second in sacks. However, the run defense was terrible, 183 yards rushing per game. That is clearly the weak spot. A lot of good news, though, with this Arizona State defense. They got a huge boost when defensive tackle Will Sutton came back for his senior season. This kid is one of the best defensive linemen in the country. He had 13 sacks last year, 23.5 tackles for a loss, and he's not by himself. They got some speedy linebackers in Carl Bradford and Chris Young, and they got some very good nose tackles up front, as well as freshman All-American Last year, defensive end Junior Oniela and Devon Coleman. So Todd Graham is very excited about this season. He thinks they're going to be even better than last year's 8-5 team. A lot of talent and balance across the board. If you're looking for the early marquee game for them, September 14th, Wisconsin is flying out to Arizona State. Right now that game is a pick'em, and it's a long road trip for the Badgers. And then some of their early games, they're going to be playing Wisconsin, Stanford, USC, and Notre Dame. All those games they play by October 5th. So we're going to know early whether this Arizona State team is for real or not. All right, let's jump back to the Pac-12 North. Jeff, are there any teams that can give Stanford or Oregon a run?
Well, Oregon State's going to have a good team again. I don't think they'll finish first, but last year they started off 6-0, including wins over Wisconsin, UCLA, and BYU. Then they lost 4 of the last 7, but 3 of those 4 losses were by 4 points or less. They returned 8 on offense, 7 on defense. They were 9-4 last year, 8-5 against the spread. They lost to Texas in that bowl game, 31-27. Last year, as an underdog, they were 4-1 straight up and against the spread, plus including that big win at UCLA. They were 8-point dogs in that game. Once again, Mike Riley has a tremendous offense. Junior quarterback Sean Mannion, 15 TDs last year, although he did throw 13 interceptions. Cody Vaz is also in the picture. He played a few games last year, including that bowl game against Texas. Last year, the Beavers averaged 32.5 points, 307 yards passing, and 124 yards rushing. The passing attack was 19th in the nation. They returned junior wide receiver Brandon Cooks, who had 1,151 receiving yards, probably one of the most underrated wide receivers in the country. 4 starters returned the offensive line, along with sophomore Storm Woods in the backfield. 940 yards last year for Woods, 13 TDs. Last year they were 19th in passing, 101st in rushing. I like balanced offenses, but it seems to work for Oregon State. Last year, they did a great job. The defense is a lot better last year than expected. They only allowed 20.6 yards per game. Defensive end Scott Crichton returns, but he is recovering from a shoulder injury that he suffered in spring practice. But Riley signed 4 junior college defensive linemen, so they should be in good shape there. They get Stanford and USC at home. They're on an 8-3 run over the total. And look at the schedule here. They start off at home against Eastern Washington and Hawaii. Then they go to Utah in a conference game, and they have at San Diego State. I'm looking at Oregon State to have a 9-3 season this year. The non-conference schedule is pretty weak, so I'll go with 9-3 and probably third in the North Division, John.
Okay, I'm going to take a look in the Pac-12 North. I'm going to stay there with Washington Huskies. I mean, it's a team that was uneven last year. They had 7 wins, 6 losses. Very good against the spread, 8-5 ATS, just 5-4 in the Pac-12. However, it was an unusual season. I mean, they were a 14-point favorite over rival Washington State. Lost the game 31-28, and yet earlier in the year they beat Stanford as a 7-point dog of all teams, 17-14. Hopes are really pretty high, though, for the Huskies for this season. A lot of things to like. First of all, there's 9 starters back on offense, 7 on defense. And the offense was a big disappointment last year, despite a ton of talent. And that's because the offensive line was simply banged up with injuries. But they hope to be healthy this year. And look at the talent that this team has. Quarterback Keith Price, he had 19 touchdowns and 13 picks. You got junior running back Bishop Sankley, who had over 1,400 yards rushing. You got a big 6'6" junior tight end in Austin Sefrin Jenkins, and wide receiver Cason Williams. He had 878 yards. This is one of the top wide receiver core in the Pac-10. And if they can give Keith Price some better protection, there's a chance he could return to his 2011 form when he was simply dynamite with 33 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. That Husky offense averaged 40 points per game. So the drop-off last year was significant, but they could get back to that kind of potent level with all the talent and experience they had. And the defense, too. Defense was a train wreck 2 years ago, so they brought in last year new defensive coordinator Justin Wilcox. Boy, he made huge strides. They allowed 24.2 points per game last year. That was 39th in the nation, and it was an improvement by 12 points. So a lot of good things to like on the talent level on the field and on the sidelines for Washington. The only weak spot will be the secondary. They did lose 2 starters, one of them going to the NFL and Desmond Trufant. But still, there's quite a bit to like. I'm going to say a bowl game is likely. Winning the Pac-12, though, will be difficult because they got road games at Stanford, Arizona State, and UCLA. And if you're looking for the schedule, they're going to open against Boise State. This is a team that they played in the Las Vegas Bowl, lost 28-26. The early line on that, August 31st, Boise State is at Washington. Washington, a 2-point favorite. And keep in mind, the Huskies are on an 8-3 spread run. All right, Jeff, how about the USC Trojans? I mean, we've been beating them up a little bit on this show already, and they were fool's gold last year. Was that a fluke, or are they ready for bounce back?
Well, just as UCLA backers are having more optimistic than they've been in many years, I think SC fans are probably the most pessimistic they've been in many years, although still, compared to most teams in the country, they're still in pretty good shape. They returned 8 on offense, 7 on defense last year. They were disappointing 7-6 straight up, 3-10 against the spread, obviously being overvalued the whole season. Last year, the culprits were the defense and the offensive line. The offensive line was okay, as far as the running backs, but as far as pass blocking, it was a problem. So this year, I'm not sure. They have four returning stars offensive line. I'm not sure that's good or bad. The quarterback's going to be Max Woodek. He played a few games late last season, filling in for Barkley. He was okay, but he was put into a tough spot there. He ended up with 3 TDs, 5 interceptions. They have running back Silas Redbeck. He had 905 yards last year. Wide receiver Marquise Lee, of course, 1,700 yards last year at receiving yards. Also, Max Brown is supposedly the quarterback of the future. He also has sophomore Cody Kessler in the picture. Linebacking core, one of the best in the Pac-12 with Hayes Pollard, Lamar Dawson, Deion Bailey. Only one starter returning in the secondary, and their cornerback Nickel Roby left for the NFL. One of the biggest problems here last year was their defense overall, but especially against spread offenses. Oregon put up 62 points on the Trojans. Arizona scored 39. So that's going to be a big. They hired Clancy Pendergast, who was at Cal, for the new defensive coordinator. That's going to be his big job there to learn how to defend against spread offenses. October 19th, they played Notre Dame at Notre Dame. Notre Dame right now -5. That's the early line. Right now I'd go with Notre Dame, but of course these early lines you have to be real careful because things may change in the next few months. Looking at the schedule, I'm looking for them to go 7-6 again, maybe 8-4. Let me look at the schedule here. They open at Hawaii, and then the other non-conference games are home against Boston College and Utah State. So they could probably eke out 8 wins this year, John. I'll go for 8-4, and as far as the South Division, 3rd place, I'd say.
Well, in that case, what are the odds that they're going to bring Pete Carroll back the following year?
Even money, probably. But he's having too much fun in Seattle. He won't come back. So,
as well as trouble. I'm going to take a look at the Cal Golden Bears. I mean, here's a program that just bottomed out last year. 3-9 straight up, 3-9 against the spread, just 2-7 in the Pac-12. And Jeff Tedford is out, so they're rebuilding with Sonny Dykes. Dykes is kind of a good hire for the wide open passing offenses of the Pac-12. That's what he ran at Louisiana Tech. In fact, that La Tech team was 3rd in the nation last year with over 350 yards passing per game. So that's what you're going to see with this Cal team, a wide open attacking offense. He actually did a very good job building La Tech. The bad news is Jeff Tedford kind of left the cupboard bare. There's not a lot to work with. If you want to start with the offense, boy, they were 89th in the nation in passing and 42nd in rushing. He has offensive coordinator Tony Franklin. The two of them have quite a bit of work to do. Let's start at quarterback. They do have senior quarterback Alan Bridgeford, but he didn't do much. 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and only 45% completions against a lot of bad Pac-12 defenses. So the other quarterbacks are junior Austin Hinder, and then a redshirt freshman Zach Klein, as well as Jared Goff, who's a freshman. When you look at all those guys, Klein, the redshirt freshman, he's kind of the best prospect. Got to believe that the new coach Dykes would probably want to start with a younger sophomore or a freshman as opposed to going with a senior like Bridgeford, knowing that he's not going to be there after that one season. And then the defense has all kinds of problems too. They were 89th in pass defense, giving up 33 points per game. The defense finished 10th in the Pac-12, and there's not a lot to work with. They really packed it in down the stretch. The only plus would be the early recruiting class that Dykes have. I did a very good job with wide receivers. No defensive players in there yet. So it's clear that Dykes is focused first on getting that quarterback and stocking it with wide receivers. So all of that means that Cal will have a losing record this year as they rebuild, and he's got a lot of work to do. But if you like to play totals, keep an eye on Cal. Should be better offensively with Dykes opening it up, and the new wide receivers are going to help. And this defense might be very bad. So Cal might be a good team to look at over the total. All right, Jeff, how about down in Arizona? Any prospects for the Wildcats?
Well, offensively, they're in good shape. They returned 6. They returned 11 on defense, but I'm not sure if you want these guys back after last year. The defense allowed 35 points per game last year. They ranked 118th total defense, 102nd in scoring defense last year. The Wildcats were 8-5, 6-7 against the spread. The offense averaged 38.2 points, 298 yards passing, 228 yards rushing, which was 15th in the nation. So offensively, it's not a problem here. We have junior running back Kadeem Carey that led the country in rushing yards. Kadeem Carey, 303 carries, more than 1,900 yards, 23 TDs, 6.4 yards per carry. But he's had some off-field issues. That might be one thing to keep in mind. They also have junior wide receiver back Austin Hill, 1,364 yards, 11 TDs. The one problem is Matt Scott is gone. They need a quarterback here. The senior quarterback, B.J. Denker, had 3 TDs and 1 interception with 259 yards passing. And they have a SC transfer, Jesse Scroggins. He has a foot injury. And sophomore quarterback transfer from Louisiana Tech, Nick Isham. So quarterback could be a problem, but with this spread offense, sometimes you can just plug in anybody here and you can have success. The offensive line returns 3 starters, and once again the running game should be very good again. They were 9-3 over the total. And that would figure with that great offense and awful defense. This year, the schedule looks pretty. They have 3 wins right off the bat. They play Northern Arizona at UNLV and then Texas San Antonio. So they'll get the bowl game based on that right there. I figure a 7-5 season for Arizona, and they'll battle it out with SC for 3rd place in the Pac-12 South.
All right, plenty of doings in the Pac-12 with all these changes going on. Well, another thing coming up is preseason football. You got 4 weeks to try and beat the books, and if you want to get on board with Las Vegas Sports Services, Jeff, how can they do that?
4 weeks, the entire NFL preseason, all the 5-star players, edge winners for the entire 2013 NFL preseason, only $19. Just call LVSS at 1-866-575-8916. This is the best time to get the best prices because the prices go up as we get close to the season. So you want to get on board right now. The entire preseason, all the 5-star players, edge winners at LVSS, $19, 1-866-575-8916.
All right, and Jim Feist has an early bird special for NFL fans. You get the entire preseason. That's 4 weeks, including his preseason game of the year for $29. 1-866-841-1655. All right, thanks for joining us. Make sure you check out more college football and NFL season previews right here at jimfeist.tv. Good luck, everyone.